Once again, the Israeli government is being condemned for killing civilians in Gaza, and once again, the Israeli government is blaming Hamas. But in all the Israel-Hamas coverage of Gaza and the Palestinians, one entity gets left out of the discussion and debate: the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, the nationalist coalition, internationally recognized as the representative for the people of Palestine. Since the start of the war, there have been endless high-level conversations about what happens to the embattled strip post-war or post-genocide, and most importantly, who governs it, who's in charge. But the PLO has always been focused on the L in its title, on national liberation, on freedom, on statehood. And while Gaza is once again being bombed back to the Stone Age, to borrow an old line from Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz, there is weirdly some progress internationally on the statehood front. On Tuesday, Norway, Spain and Ireland all officially recognized a Palestinian state, a decision welcomed by the PLO's Secretary-General, who called it the path to stability, security and peace in the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, on the other hand, described the move in typically understated fashion as rewarding terrorism. Who better to discuss all of this with, as well as the ongoing Israeli violence in Rafah, than one of the PLO's most senior and well-known figures, Ambassador Husam Zomlot, the current head of the Palestinian Mission to the UK and a member of Fatah. Ambassador Zomlot, thank you so much for coming on Mehdi Unfiltered today. I want to start with just talking to you personally. I know that you yourself have lost family members in Gaza since October the 7th. How are your family, your friends, your contacts in Gaza doing right now? Are they safe?
No one is safe in Gaza, Mehdi. But please allow me, before I go on, I just want to commend you for what you have been doing for all these months and for pushing back against the misinformed, deliberately so, mainstream media, and for really presenting the truth. And it has been paying off so far. So thank you, Mehdi. As for the situation of my family and my people, it cannot be described in words. Really cannot be described in words. I was born in Rafah. I know the situation there and the situation in Gaza at large. And the closest thing is this is apoplectic in every sense of the word. I mean, my entire extended family now, that is the aunts, the uncles, their siblings, their children, are living in one home, one house. That is my parents' house in Gaza City. Everybody from the north had to come there. And those who had made it to the south, to Rafah, had to come back because Rafah has become the target of the Israeli genocidal aggression. And you're talking about hundreds of people gathering in one home. And I mean it, Mehdi, hundreds. No electricity, no running water, no nothing. So whenever we have the opportunity to reach them, what we hear is simply cannot be described in words. And this isn't just about them expecting to be murdered at any point in time. This is about the lack of any services, health, education, and what have you. So it is apoplectic. It's almost like the Armageddon.
Put the attack, Ambassador, put the attack on Rafah on Sunday, on those refugee tents, on those kids on Sunday night. Put that for us in historical context, in terms of the atrocities that Israel, the Zionist movement, has carried out against Palestinians since 1948. Where does it rank what happened on Sunday? How bad was it? How horrific was it in your view?
Well, this is a historic scale in terms of the savagery, barbarity, the disregard for human life. Definitely, this is a new record for Israel, but this is absolutely a pattern of 76 years since Israel was established. And let me remind your viewers here that the very same people Israel targeted in Rafah are the victims of Israel's creation. They were made refugees. 80% of Gaza's population are refugees who were forced out of their homes, towns, businesses, and what have you in 1948. The Nakba, 2/3 of the nation were forced out, and many of them found their way in Gaza. So in a way, this is maybe the first time in human history that refugees are made refugees one time, two times, three times in their lifetime. And in a way, this is the first time also the same ancestors of these refugees are being killed and targeted. And particularly Rafah, because Rafah has been home to several refugees from the Nakba time, the 1948, and now refugees again from the Gaza Strip itself. So in a way, history repeats itself, unfortunately. And in a way, it's just a reminder for us Palestinians that Nakba has been ongoing non-stop for all these years.
Ambassador Zomlot, the attack, as horrific as it was on Sunday night, still does not seem to have crossed Joe Biden's now infamous red line when it comes to Rafah, on Netanyahu going into Rafah. According to National Security Council spokesman John Kirby, he said it didn't constitute a full-scale invasion. What do you say to John Kirby, even as we see Israeli tanks rolling into the center of Rafah on our TV screens?
Well, all what I can tell you is the position, the policy of the U.S. is either incompetent or disingenuous, one of both. Because they have been drawing a red line after another, and Israel crosses each of these red lines one after another, and the U.S. goes and changes the goalpost altogether, as has happened with Rafah. Israel is engaged in a full onslaught on Rafah, full attack. The bombardment on Sunday was an Israeli bombardment. Israel did drop huge bombs, 2,000-pound bombs on the heads of these civilians, taking shelter in so-called security zones, designated zones for civilians, as you all know, including yesterday, by the way, in Al Mawasi area. So this has been continuing. The question is about all these inconsistencies in the part of the US and the UK, for that matter. Once they tell us that they are with a two-state solution, when we present them with an opportunity in the UN, in the Security Council, yes, and in the General Assembly, they vote against it. Once they say the most significant part of the Gaza situation is the catastrophic humanitarian situation, the US wants to deal with it. Immediately we hear from Secretary Blinken all the time, but then Israel makes allegations unfounded against UNRWA. The US and the UK were very quick to suspend funding, and they go to build that pier that we are reading of late that it has been broken.
Falling apart.
Which tells you the U.S. is unable even to pressure Israel to open the land crossings to allow for the unfettered access of aid. And the list of contradictions and disingenuous sort of double talk goes on. If you have time, I can list it. And therefore, I think the last few months have really shown that the U.S. is only verbal when it comes to Israel. It gives Israel advice and never attach its advice with any consequences. So the U.S. could come and say, to Israel, our advice comes with money. Either you take our advice and money, or you don't take both. But it seems the U.S. is absolutely decoupling their advice, their policy, from their unequivocal support for Israel. And this is the issue.
Just this week, Nikki Haley, Republican politician, was pictured in Israel writing a message of support on an Israeli artillery shell that said, "Finish them," to which you replied on Twitter saying this is repugnant and criminal. Now, this isn't just any US politician. This is a woman who was running for president until very recently, who was ambassador to the UN when you served in Washington, D.C. She could end up in government again if Trump wins. If you could speak directly to Nikki Haley, what would you say to her?
I wouldn't be speaking to Nikki Haley. I would be speaking to the American people, to the American public, and we see the historic change in the public opinion, Mehdi. We see the students and the incumbents everywhere. Yes. We see the outpouring support in the U.S. Right across the society, cross-sectional, the unity of the American people. I would like to address them and tell them they should politically finish her off. Because such statements is not just about the Palestinian people. Such criminal, repugnant statements and action, signing, finish them off, means that this is going to affect America itself and the rest of the world. We don't need people at the top with such criminal intentions and such support for genocide. So, as happened here in the UK, for some politicians who tried to paint the millions of British people as hate marches, and they lost their jobs here by the British people, without mentioning names. The same thing, Mehdi, should happen to Nikki Haley by the American people.
So the problem is Nikki Haley could be back in government within a year because Donald Trump, according to a lot of polls, is leading in the presidential race. Donald Trump, of course, shut down your Palestinian mission in Washington, D.C. when you were ambassador here. You're now in the UK. You experienced firsthand the anti-Palestinian racism of Donald Trump and Mike Pence and Mike Pompeo and Jared Kushner and Nikki Haley at the UN. We all know the Biden administration has been a disaster on Gaza, has been complicit in genocide. Would a Trump administration next January be any better or be worse for Palestinians?
Well, what we know so far, this isn't about Trump or Biden. This is about the US. And so far, the US has failed miserably to bring itself to the level of an honest mediator, of a leading force in our international relations. The US has remained, whether Democratic administrations or Republican administrations, have remained completely and utterly biased. Therefore, I must say the margin of difference is not felt here, and therefore this isn't about the person of the president or the kind of administration. This is about the US in its entirety, and how do we deal with it regardless of who is elected in the White House.
So moving from the US to Europe, we have these 3 EU member countries this week recognizing Palestinian statehood. They say they hope other EU countries will follow their lead. Who do you think will be next? And is any of this going to make any practical difference to the lives of ordinary Palestinians on the ground in the occupied West Bank, in Gaza right now? Any of this statehood talk?
The issue of recognition is a major, fundamental issue for the issue of Palestine, for the Palestinian cause. Because, Mehdi, as you know, the heart of our issue is that we were cancelled. And guess by who? By main superpowers of the time. Great Britain and the Balfour Declaration that cancelled us as a people, turned us into non-Jewish minorities when we own 98% of the land and we're more than 95% of the population. We were defined by what we are not rather than what we are, and we are ancient, lived there for millennia, the hub between East and West, the birthplace of Christianity, and what you know about Palestine and the Palestinian people. And then the cancellation continued by the creation of Israel, Zionism, and the negation of the Palestinian people. Remember, a people without a land for a land without a people. Our very negation continued, and then the ethnic cleansing was a result of that cancellation and negation. And then the world, Western world, continued ever since through giving Israel a veto power over our right to self-determination. So you remember all these European countries and the US keep saying only after reaching a final agreement we will recognize the state of Palestine, meaning only if Israel agrees to. Now, here comes the importance of the action and the declaration of these 3 countries, Spain, Ireland, and Norway, which is to actually cut loose of this policy that has lasted for many years and that has led us to where we are. So therefore, recognizing the inalienable right of the Palestinian people for self-determination and statehood is a business that has been long overdue, a commitment that should have happened long ago. This is not a favor or a gift or a reward. This is a right that should have been granted long ago. However, that is also a very practical recognition, because you asked how it will affect things. From now on, what we are seeking is that it's not a negotiation between a state, that is Israel, and a people. So it says Israel and the Palestinians. No. It should be between 2 states, 2 recognized states with seat in the UN, and these 2 states do not negotiate principles. They do not negotiate the international consensus, which include the border, the capital, the right of refugees. We only negotiate modalities. So recognition would level the field, Mehdi. And I believe these 3 countries have really taken a major step with us into the direction of peace and justice.
I know you've taken part in several conversations on the day after in Gaza, if we can use that phrase. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa laid out plans on Monday at a press conference which included rebuilding Palestinian Authority institutions in Gaza, and reintegrating them with institutions in the West Bank. Does the Palestinian Authority plan on taking control in Gaza should Hamas no longer rule there in the future? Should the PA take over governance of the Gaza Strip?
First of all, since at least 2011 and 2012, when we went to the UN and gained our UN status, it's the state of Palestine that is in charge of our people and territory and represent our people, and its main mandate is the defense of our people in international forums and internally. And that state has a government. The government represents every Palestinian. That government is the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, that I represent here in London. I used to represent in Washington. So the one Palestinian political entity that represents all Palestinians is the Palestine Liberation Organization. Now, the PA was established after Oslo to undertake the PLO's responsibilities under the Oslo Accords, which Israel has absolutely ransacked, as you know, and made mockery of. Now, the only Palestinian national institutions that are able and capable to provide for our people, unite our territory, our geography, and our polity. That is our political system. And therefore, it is the state of Palestine and the government of the state of Palestine that can be and will be in charge of the entire occupied territory of the state of Palestine. That is Gaza, that is the West Bank, including Israel.
So to be clear, no coalition of Arab states and no Hamas will be running Gaza in the future?
No, you cannot equate all that. The only entity that will run and have the legitimacy in the eyes of the Palestinian people and the world is the state of Palestine and the government of the state of Palestine.
So here's the problem for you, Ambassador. According to a March poll conducted in the West Bank and Gaza by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, the respondents were asked about who they would want to see in power in Gaza after the war. 13% selected the PA, but without President Abbas. 11% selected the PA with President Abbas. And 59% selected Hamas over both those options. Your movement, Fatah, and your leader, President Abbas, are super unpopular right now, aren't they?
Well, you leave that to the Palestinian people when elections are convened. And
we haven't had elections. President Abbas's term ended over a decade ago.
And we, Mehdi, and we are at war now, and genocidal war being committed against us. And we have been attempting at convening elections in the last couple of years. And you know what happened. Israel wanted to pocket Jerusalem through our elections by denying us and denying our people in Jerusalem, more than 350,000 Palestinians, the right to vote in the national elections. And for us, in the end, elections is a tool to get our liberation, our sovereignty, and our democratic
But
process.
This polling doesn't worry you. No, hold on, Ambassador. This polling doesn't worry you. 59% of Palestinians prefer Hamas over PA.
No, pollings do not worry me. I'm not worried. Pollings come and go. It's seasonal. What should be the case is that the people of Palestine are the only source of legitimacy for the Palestinian leadership and government. And therefore, they must be offered a democratic process in the earliest opportunity possible so they elect their leaders. And our internal affairs is our internal affairs. Remember, our leadership has been elected. Yes, elections has been delayed, but President Abbas is the president of the PLO.
I mean, his term expired over a decade ago, Ambassador.
You asked, and he's nominated by Fatah, by the national party. He's elected by his party to lead the PLO. The PLO system is based on that. Each party nominates.
Yes, but the PA. Hold on, Ambassador. His presidency of the PA expired a long time ago. You know that.
This isn't about the PA. The PA. I explained to you. Explained to you that Israel has bulldozed the Oslo Accords. Bulldozed the PA, and now Israel is in real onslaught against the PA particularly. Okay. And you know that Netanyahu and Smotrich has literally frozen all of our own money and funding over the last so many months. And you know Netanyahu and Smotrich wants the PA gone, and they believe that the PA and the national institutions are the biggest enemy for Israel because we are the ones who are presenting the vision for liberation and statehood, which is the antidote for Netanyahu and Zionism. But Mehdi, this is not an internal debate. The internal debate can only be resolved, managed within a democratic process. Let the people of Palestine discuss that. This is
but let me ask
about
you,
the Palestinian
hold
people
on.
and
Let me
their
ask you about
institutions.
let me ask you about something important. Do you think Israel's war on Gaza has actually made Hamas stronger, empowered them, made them more popular, made it easier for Hamas to recruit? Has that been the impact of the war on Gaza since October 7th, that Hamas is actually stronger than it was on October the 6th? Is that your view?
This isn't about Hamas, Mehdi. But this is about the Palestinian people, and this has been 100 years of struggle for
But
the
Hamas
Palestinian
is a rival for your party, so it's a legitimate question. Do you believe Hamas is stronger or weaker today as a result of Israel's actions?
No, you should ask me, do I believe the Palestinian people are stronger or weaker? That's
I'll
the
ask
question.
You that next. I'm asking you now, is Hamas stronger or weaker? Stronger or weaker? It's a simple question.
Speak to Hamas spokesperson, my friend. Don't ask me that question. I don't know. What I know is that for the last 8 months, the people of Palestine have been going through genocide. It is genocide, Mehdi. And we just started talking about my family and what is happening in Gaza. But at the other side of genocide, Israel has been unmasked worldwide. Israel has been exposed beyond repair. And therefore, this is a moment when we galvanize this unprecedented international solidarity with us. So let's not minimize the people of Palestine.
No, I don't think anyone would ever accuse this show of minimizing the people of Palestine. Last question I have to ask you before we finish. The Israelis often say that Fatah, your movement, is as bad as Hamas in their view, because Fatah has refused to condemn or disown what Hamas did on October the 7th. You are a senior PLO official, a member of Fatah. How would you describe what happened on October the 7th, what Hamas did?
Well, I know that the Israelis consider Fatah and the national movement and the PLO to be their biggest enemy. Otherwise, how do you explain what they have been doing? And by the way, their fight against the PLO is relentless and throughout the years, but it has intensified over the last few months. And there is a very clear, deliberate sort of strategy of Israel to collapse the PLO and the PAA and all the national institutions, because for Israel and for Netanyahu, who has been either a prime minister or a shadow prime minister in Israel for a quarter of a century, or for Netanyahu, the strategy is the divide and rule. The strategy is to break the backbone of the Palestinian national movement, the backbone of statehood and the independence quest through what they have been doing, funding the division and undermining the PLO and the national institutions. And when senior officials in Israel say Fatah is the enemy, we believe them. We believe them because Fatah in the end and the Palestine national movement is a movement about liberation and about return. Our focus is internal. We care so much about the independence of our decision-making process and that we liberate our land. So the least we need now is to make this a Palestinian domestic issue. That's fine, but between the Palestinian
you didn't answer my question, though. How would you describe what happened on October the 7th, what Hamas did?
I leave that to the ICJ and the ICC, and I leave that to the international forums. What I see is that Gaza is made of 80% refugees who have been forced out of their homes, including my own parents. I see 17 years of a criminal blockade against our people in Gaza. I see a policy of displacement and replacement in the West Bank that has been ongoing for 76 years. I see insistence by this colonial occupation to actually completely finish us off, and therefore what we need to make sure of is that any act we do is in accordance with international law and international legality. And that's why we want the world and we want the international judicial system to come and assess the situation and what is right and what is wrong. And that's why Israel, and you may have read the Guardian article yesterday about, you read the intimidation and the threat against the prosecutor general, the former prosecutor general of the ICC. So they have something to hide. We don't have anything to hide.
If you don't have anything to hide, why can't you just describe what happened on October 7th?
I'm an ambassador here. I'm not a commentator, Mehdi. I'm not a commentator here. I'm not coming to give you an analysis. I have told you that we have been struggling for 100 years and our struggle is legitimate. I don't have the details of everything that happened, on that day, but you have noticed and you have followed that our position is clear, that the root cause of all this is the occupation, the colonization, the besiegement, the apartheid system that was imposed on us. So we are clear that the absolute need is to uproot this root cause, which is the occupation, and everything else is a symptom of that illness, which is occupation.
Ambassador Husam Zomlot, we will have to leave it there. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.